Hi, I'm John Ferrugia. Welcome to Insight. A legacy of modern warfare is the lingering damage, both physical and mental, inflicted on our veterans. The number of World War II and Korean vets is diminishing, but Vietnam-era veterans, now in their 60s and older, are requiring even more care. Our stories in this Insight are asking if we are truly serving those who served. Vietnam and post-9/11 vets, both men and women, are facing challenges in receiving health care and other services from the Department of Veterans Affairs. These are services that help them deal with one of the most insidious of all issues they face, post-traumatic stress disorder. We begin with vets in rural areas, where almost half of Colorado's Vietnam veterans live. There, just getting to see a doctor is often an ordeal.
How's it going today?
Mike Kilbane is a former Coast Guard gunner's mate who served in Vietnam.
Everything's good.
He has come to the VA hospital in Grand Junction to see his primary care doctor, John Best.
How's your mood and mental health doing?
I got a little shaky a couple months ago.
Like many who served in Vietnam, Kilbane suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD.
You know who to get a hold of when you're having some issues. You know, we're all concerned, and you know
all
the phone numbers there.
And like thousands of other rural veterans across Colorado, Mike Kilbane has traveled hundreds of miles just for this appointment.
Good. Okay.
Kilbane lives in Hayden, Colorado, and the VA hospital in Grand Junction is the closest full-service VA facility. To get here, he drives himself or drives to Craig, Colorado to board a van, as he did today, to get to the hospital and back. On the 2.5-hour drive, he talked about his service aboard a patrol boat in Vietnam.
One canal we went up, you could almost reach out and touch the jungle. It was so close on both sides.
Pretty tense.
Very, very tense. Guns are all manned. I mean, ambush, anything could happen at any minute. Yeah. And you're a sitting duck.
He still has shrapnel embedded in his jaw from an explosion, and even though his sunglasses hide his deep emotion, he is not willing to venture further into the past to talk about the constant fear that still haunts him and the days that people died. But the Bronze Star he was awarded with a Combat V for Valor Under Fire speaks to those missions when his life and those of his shipmates hung in the balance. And when the fighting was over for him, he came home to a nation divided over the war, and he simply buried his trauma.
You didn't want people to know you were in the service.
More than 30 years later, in 2003, when having coffee with fellow vets, someone pulled out some old photos of combat.
I lost it, but I just walked out. One of the guys, he chased me down, and we sat there in the park, had a long talk, said, you need to get in and see somebody.
Kilbane is one of more than 400,000 veterans in Colorado and one of nearly 66,000 who live in rural areas. Because the VA is stretched so thin, the agency has established telehealth connections so rural vets don't have to travel in person to every appointment. The VA has community-based outpatient clinics in local communities that are connected to hospital centers like the one in Grand Junction.
Did we get his labs ordered?
The clinic here in Craig, Colorado is always busy.
We need to go do your vitals, okay?
Okay.
Former Marine and Vietnam vet Ed Garcia comes to the clinic for routine checkups.
Just checking your pulses.
You can do your blood work here.
Good afternoon. How are you guys?
You can see your doctor over the telenet.
Good, doctor, good, very good.
And if it really gets bad, like you have to go see somebody, 350 miles isn't bad, you know, I can do that.
I think that most people would have a different degree of comfort. You know, they would prefer face-to-face visits in many situations given the choice. If we had the numbers to justify the presence of face-to-face clinics in all these outlying areas, I think that would be a great thing.
I think that we really need that person-to-person human interaction when it comes to mental health. In fact, I would argue there's not enough of it in the VA today.
Colorado Congressman Mike Kaufman is a Marine veteran of the Gulf War and a member of the House Veteran Affairs Committee.
It's just getting access into the system that's problematic, particularly for that first appointment. That's probably the toughest part.
To get an idea of just how stretched the VA really is, you only have to look as far as its job postings. It's stunning. On the medical side, its website shows the VA is looking for more than 1,000 doctors and 900 nurses. On the mental health side, VA officials confirmed the agency wants to hire more than 600 social workers and mental health counselors, just over 300 psychiatrists, and 668 psychologists.
There will never be enough providers in any healthcare system for everyone to have a face-to-face visit.
Dr. Ellen Mangione is the chief of staff for the VA's Eastern Colorado healthcare system. That includes Denver.
We continue to recruit and are very active with recruitment. And of course, with recruitment, that means that we have vacancies.
Dr. Mangione agrees the current telehealth system based in clinics has its drawbacks, but she says a new system is rolling out now connected to personal devices, and it's going to improve the VA's ability to provide service, even crisis mental health services, to rural veterans.
We can actually have an appointment with a mental health provider using an iPhone, for example, or an iPad. So you don't have to go into a clinic.
And then may be particularly appealing to younger vets who are comfortable with mobile technology. But
I had the option of telemedicine. I watched it and I realized, no, I need to be with the group and I need to see the body language.
many Vietnam vets like Kenton Crollo will never feel comfortable talking about their traumatic experiences or PTSD using a phone or a computer. He will only see a VA counselor.
So I got a new guy I really like.
Crollo served as a forward artillery observer and radio corpsman with troops in the field in Vietnam. He was in combat and lost his best friend, who was killed in action. Yet when Crollo came home, he felt the nation hated him for his service.
I mean, I'm angry at them. They didn't go. Hey, Rocky's dead. My best friend, Louis Vincent Marciano. Rocky's dead, nobody cares. I mean, the culture's moved on.
His anger nearly wrecked his life, costing him a successful business and straining his marriage. It was an empathetic fellow vet who finally told him that the root of his problem was the war.
He said, you need to go to the VA. So I drive 3 hours one way, do the 1 hour therapy, 12 weeks in a row. I do not miss a session, and my life starts turning around.
The VA has learned from its failure to initially understand the traumatic experiences of Vietnam vets and those who served before them. It is now improving mental health care for more recent warriors.
Identifying these people earlier, screening earlier for traumatic brain injuries, screen them for blast injuries, and we're making sure we're plugging them in with necessary resources, which may include psychiatric or neurological further assessments.
And in rural areas, it was the Veterans Choice Program, rushed into service in 2014, that was supposed to supplement the strained VA system. A veteran in a rural area could visit a local doctor, psychiatrist, or hospital, and the VA would pay for it, somewhat like Medicare. But there was a lack of communication with providers, and vets like Mike Kilbane says the red tape was overwhelming.
Sometimes I would call 5 times a day, and the thing is, you get a different person, and they don't even know what I'm talking about.
Soon, providers were getting paid late or not at all, and dropped out.
Remember that in the rural communities, there are also challenges within that community with finding providers too. So I think that by definition really presents a bit of a challenge to the program.
And that, claim veteran advocates, is why the nearly 1 in 5 vets who live in rural Colorado are not getting the same care as vets in metropolitan areas.
I do my best to talk to doctors and ask them to please join the choice program and ask them not to drop out.
Pat Hammond is the Veteran Services Officer, a VSO, for Eagle County and served as an Army nurse in Vietnam. She and VSOs in every other Colorado county are paid by local tax dollars. They advocate for veterans, helping coordinate state, local, and volunteer services that fill the gaps in the VA system.
So I do what I can to make the existing program work.
She says the VA simply does not have the outreach necessary to serve vets where they live. So county VSOs can be a lifeline for rural vets, even those who need a higher level of care.
Finding good nurses to help take care of veterans at home is tricky, even though we can get the money for it. And so the state has stepped in, and we have 5 nursing homes in the state of Colorado, all with different types of care that they offer.
And remember that van that carried Mike Kilbane to Grand Junction? Well, it was paid for by the state, and the driver was provided by Moffat County. But Congressman Mike Hoffman says the gap in better care for all veterans cannot be solved by state and local governments.
We have a growing population in Colorado, and we have a growing population of veterans. But there are other northeast part of the country has lost population, yet has a footprint, a VA footprint still there. and we don't need it. And so we've just got to, we have to be able to close unused facilities or consolidate facilities so that we can address the needs where the veterans are.
The answer is not just hiring more people. It's looking at our processes that we have in place right now and seeing where we have mismatch between supply and demand and productivity of individuals.
But as the debate continues, there are still veterans who have served but who are not being served because of a system that needs resources and efficiency, and because some vets are still refusing help. Kenton Crollo was one of those. Today, he is not.
These veterans that are still fighting the system have got to quit.
Congress is now in the process of retooling the Choice program to make it more financially reliable. The goal is to roll out the revised